This program is brought to you by Bobway Media, a work of the Chipman Road Church of Christ in Lee's Summit, Missouri, and under the oversight of the elders of the Chipman Road Church of Christ. We thank you for listening.
I guess it was bound to happen. Their prayers had become a little more sophisticated, so I guess it was a little bit more of a surprise because they now ask God to help the sick, even by name sometimes. They ask God to protect their family that are not with them. They thank God for the blessings of salvation, and they even thank Him for His word. But there are also the things for the air that we breathe, the grass and the flowers. So even though they're more rare, I should have seen it coming. I mean, the question was a practical one, but really it was a theological one at its core. Mama, why did God make mosquitoes? I know He made everything good, but I can't think of one good reason for a mosquito. I had no idea where the question came from. I mean, we played outside a lot when they were visited and had been outside most of the morning, and now we were enjoying lunch, but not one mosquito had bothered us. In fact, in recent years, mosquitoes had become pretty rare due to the drought that we've had. But here we were, with a question out of nowhere. And I stared at that sweet face of my 9-year-old grandson who's dealing with a lot more questions about God's plan for marriage, the consequences of sin that has affected his life deeply. Those have taken up so much of our discussions. The wages of sin that have caused his life to turn upside down lately. But this was his question, and it was an important one at that. And surprisingly, I was just not prepared. I mean, I'd been focused on that bigger picture, all of those harder questions, and so I just stumbled a bit, and I said, I'm not sure, but I know God made them, and He makes everything good. I felt completely inadequate. So we followed up. I know God made everything for a purpose, and everything that was made was good, but I just don't get it, Mama. Mosquitoes. There doesn't seem anything good about them to me. And again, it seemed like a harmless, even cute question under different circumstances. But as I've been contemplating that seemingly innocent question, I realize it gets at the very foundation of so many other things. The question, why? When nothing seems good about it, it just doesn't seem good. It only seems to exist to harm. Mosquito bites, the itching, the buzzing, the annoyances, all of those things that he pointed out to me, in his estimation, there was just no reason for something to exist. I mean, why would God create something that is just an annoyance? And so in that moment, as I said, I failed. I had no adequate answer, just a standard, well, when we get to heaven, we'll just have to ask. To which he answered, how do you know I'm going to heaven? His sweet, blue, innocent eyes stared at me again, a question that seemed to him to be linked somehow to that mosquito, a theological question of uncertainty. Just as his life had become over the last year, so many things and people he counted on have done things that they progressed never to do. Their promises broken. And for him, everything has changed. And at the core of that, the question of why can be found. Why things happen, why God created something. Why? When what happens, everything becomes a question. And everything seems that needs a solid answer. Needs an answer that will never change. And that is what gets us, doesn't it? And although it was an innocent question, there was much more behind it that can answer more than just the fact that mosquitoes have a purpose. You see, my pat answer would never cut it, because it dismissed the question. I was telling him it wasn't important, and it was, for him. No matter how minuscule the subject, it represented something bigger. And I admit it has been for me too. There are several head scratchers, in the text, in the Bible, some things that just have not made sense in my mind, scriptures or biblical characters or situations that just didn't make sense. So unfortunately, instead of really digging in and finding the answers to those questions, I just failed to ask and take the time. I just accepted, and just that it is, whatever. I mean, just like accepting a mosquito exists just because, rather than really knowing how to give an answer to why we believe what we believe, if we really believe, like our purpose for existing, for His glory, Isaiah chapter 43, verse 7, to do His good work, Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, for His good pleasure, Revelation chapter 4, verse 11, and that we are loved beyond what we can even comprehend, Romans chapter 5, verse 8, and that is truth. That is never going to change, never going to be different. The problem is some of us don't know because we just skirted past the question. Yeah. The ask God later attitude, rather than taking the time to ask, to look, and to know, even for our own sake, because God has always given us an answer and God always has a purpose. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 4, and He has a season for every purpose under the sun. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1, right? He has a purpose for everything, even a mosquito. I mean, He really does. And we and they really need to know. So, a mosquito, right? Well, the purpose for these annoying little insects are they provide massive, easily accessible food sources for frogs, for turtles, for bats, for hummingbirds. And kids love those, But the list goes on. And did you know that the normal diet for both male and female mosquitoes is flower nectar? Now, you may have only considered bees for that pollination, but mosquitoes are pollinators as well, especially for orchids. Mosquito consumes algae in lakes and standing water and excrete nutrients back into the water, effectively recycling waste that supports plant growth. Without them, some birds and fish populations, some scientists say, would suffer or maybe even drop by more than a half. Now, to be clear, the scientific world says we could live without them because, as you know, they carry diseases. But the truth is, they also do a lot of good. And maybe you did know that, or maybe you did not know that. But it is truth. They have a purpose. They have a reason, and that's why God made them. But the truth and finding the truth is sometimes, it just takes a little time. Sure. And a heart committed to knowing and telling when the questions are asked and being prepared. And so our sweet grandson and granddaughter went home without an answer to the mosquito question. And that's been bothering me. So now I have a letter to write, don't I? A letter that will give him the answer that he's looking for. A letter that will assure him what we have always told him, that we, his papa and I, will never, ever not tell him the truth, even when it hurts, even when we wish it weren't so. We will always, always stand with God. And we will change ourselves and change our answers and how we behave if we find out that the ones that we have been doing, the ways that we have believing, conflict with God's answers. Because God's answers are the only ones that matter. Because that question about a mosquito, it really was so much more than a question about a bug. Well, an insect. My grandson would correct me on that one. Because accuracy is important. The truth is important. Even if it takes a little while to uncover, even when it takes a little studying to learn. Because it is what should be our anchor that keeps us tied to the one who is truth, the one who defines truth. Because that one is It's impossible, completely impossible for him to lie. Hebrews chapter 6, verse 18. That's the truth. And it is for this, that I bow my knees with you today to the one who has all of the answers and the one who holds all of the truth, even for the seemingly smallest of questions. They can actually make an eternal difference because they deserve the truth.
We hope you have enjoyed today's program. You can find out more about Bob Wade Media by visiting our website at bobwademedia.org, as well as finding us on social media. And as always, to God be the glory.